Hi, my name is Dhir Tyagi, and in this video, I'll be going over how to solve hard SAT command of evidence problems by going over strategies and by going over real problems. So to start, what is a command of evidence problem? A command of evidence problem is a problem that asks you to use evidence, either not historical, literary evidence, which can be in the form of quotes, usually it's a quote, or scientific evidence, oops, scientific, which is usually given through a chart, a graph, some kind of data. And so command of evidence, they give you a passage, they make a claim that passage, they ask you to support or predict the hypothesis or something using evidence that they give you to achieve the claim of the question. So what is the process of solving a command of evidence question? Well, the first step is to read the question, okay? By reading the question, you prime your brain to understand or to look for the answer. Okay, you're not just blindly reading the passage for enjoyment, you're reading it for the purpose to solve the question. The second step is to then read the passage, and while you're reading the passage, make sure to take notes. Okay? And these notes should be not like long notes, they should be very, very short notes, like 1 or 2 words maybe, like short words, and they should only be written so you can understand it. Because if you're not writing notes, sometimes you might fall into the pattern of just reading a passage, not understanding what happens, rereading until you try to get an understanding of what happens. But the trick is if you take notes and you actively read it, then you don't have to reread the passage because you'll know what's happening. You'll actually have an understanding of what's happening by taking notes. So again, make sure to actively read. That's one of the biggest tips I can give you guys for answering these command of evidence questions. Then, after you actively read and you know what the claim is, make sure to think of your own answer. Okay? So by thinking of your own answer, you're like, okay, maybe this could support it. Maybe this is one way I could support it. And then while doing that, you can kind of see, okay, maybe they want something like that. And now when you look at the answer choices, which is the fourth step, you can actually find the best piece of evidence because you actually thought of like, okay, what would the best piece of evidence be? And then you can see, okay, is this similar to my piece of evidence? Would this support it? Would this work? And then based on that, you can get the right answer because you already thought of it if it's right or what a good piece of evidence would be. So for general tips for command of evidence, again, you want to look for the best piece of evidence, right? So look for best. Be careful of wording. Be careful if they have certain like phrases that make it wrong. And also, when you're looking for the best piece of evidence, you want to look for direct evidence from the passage, right? That your evidence is right. So they might have saying like in the passage, like, "Oh, this was a claim," and then the evidence says that exact same claim, basically. So that's what I mean by direct evidence. And it's okay to reread the passage, but again, you want to be mindful of your time when you're rereading. Next, make sure also to be aware of distractor answers. So distractor answers usually they're distracting because they try to trick you into thinking that they're right. And so these distractors usually are answering the wrong question. They might be flipping the relationship. They might be just, yeah, the opposite of what the right answer is. So again, be careful of these distractors. And the reason they have them is because people sometimes rush these questions. And if you're rushing them, you might just miss up a word. You might not even understand what the passage is saying and say, oh, says this in the passage. This is an evidence. Therefore, that's the answer. But they know that, which is why they have these wrong answers. Okay, let's try out some problems now. So again, this is going to be very small for you guys to read, I would assume. So if you want to read the question as I go over it, just open up the PDF in the description or in the comment section below. Okay. So first step, we read the question, which choice best describes data from the table that supports the team's conclusion? So we want to support the conclusion. And so the passage says that employing high-performance liquid chromatography, a process that uses pressurized water to separate material into its component molecules, astrochemist Yoshino Oba and colleagues analyzed 2 samples of the Murchison meteorite that landed in Australia, as well as soil from the landing zone of the meteorite to determine the concentrations of various organic molecules. Okay, so they use chromatography, which is some kind of scientific process, to analyze the concentration of organic molecules, or just molecules, in two things, in the soil and the meteorite. And there were 2 meteorite samples, so times 2. Okay, by comparing the relative concentrations of types of molecules known as nucleobases in the Murchison meteorite with those in the soil, the team concluded that there's evidence that the nucleotides in the Murchison meteorite formed in space and are not the result of contamination on Earth. Okay, so they analyzed these meteorites versus the soil, and they found, okay, based on this evidence that we found, the meteorite formed in space, and not on Earth. Okay, so before I even look at the chart, if we're saying that, okay, so what we're basically doing is we have rocks, right? And we're using this process chromatography to see, okay, what concentration of molecules are in the rocks versus in the soil. And by looking at these concentrations, we can say, okay, if I have a lot of concentration in the rocks with the same amount of the soils, then maybe the rock is just formed from the Earth's soil. But if the meteorite formed in space and on Earth, then okay, the soil has no concentration of that molecule, but this rock has a ton of it, which means that it most likely formed outside of Earth. Because if it formed in Earth, then that rock would probably have the same amount of concentration of molecules as the soil around it. But since it formed outside, then we want to have some kind of evidence that shows, okay, lots of molecules, not on soil, okay? So we want to have molecules in the meteorite that aren't found in the soil, or vice versa, molecules that are found in the soil but not in the meteorite. Okay, so now looking at the data, we can see, actually we don't have to look at the data, but what it says nucleobase concentrations from meteorite and soil samples in parts per billion. Okay, so let's see which answer choice supports our predicted evidence. So A, I and P were detected in both meteorite samples, but not in the soil sample. Okay, so A works, right? Because A is exactly what we're saying. We're saying that they were both detected in the meteorite sample, so in the rocks, but they weren't found in the soil sample, which is again what the data shows. And that would support the claim, right? It would say, okay, then if it's in the rocks but not in the soil, then it most likely formed in space. So right off the bat, I think A is the right answer, right? But then to quickly go through the other ones, A and X were detected in both meteorite samples. So that's the opposite of our claim, right? That would show that they both formed on Earth, which is not what we want to show. So B is a distractor. Again, it's just the wrong hypothesis. C, H and P were detected in both the Murchison meteorite sample. Again, same thing as B. It's not it's saying that they're both the same, which is the opposite of what we want to say. And then D, I and H were detected in the sample 1 but not in sample 2. Okay, so this is not comparing the soil with the sample. This is just comparing the 2 meteorite samples, which again is another distractor because it's not comparing the right thing. And so D is wrong because it's comparing sample 1 and sample 2, but we don't want to compare that. We want to compare the soil and the rocks because that's going to tell us if it formed on Earth or not. So the answer is A. Okay, next. So that was an example of a scientific passage. And again, these are fine. Just make sure that you understand the passage because sometimes it's hard to understand it, and you can understand it by taking notes. Next, this is a literary one. So the question's asking us which quotation from O Pioneers most effectively illustrates the claim. So O Pioneers is a 1913 novel by Willa Cather. In the novel, Cather depicts Alexandra Bergensen as a person who takes comfort in understanding the world around her. Okay, so Cather, the claim is that Cather is a person who takes comfort in understanding the world around her. So she likes to know stuff. Okay, so our evidence, which is going to be in the form of a quote, has to show that she likes to know stuff and she's comfortable or relaxed, I guess, in knowing stuff. So A, she looked fixedly upon the bleak street as if it was as if she were gathering her strength to face something, as if she were trying with all her mighty to grasp a situation with no matter how painful must be met and dealt with somehow. So A isn't really saying anything about knowledge or knowing stuff, it's just saying that she looked at the street. So that's like not really related. B, she had never known before how much the country meant to her. The chirping of the insects down in the long grass had been like the sweetest music. She had felt as if her heart were hiding there, down there, somewhere with the quail and the plover and all the little wild things that crooned or buzzed in the sun. Under the long, shaggy ridges, she felt the future stirring. So this one's definitely a close distractor. It's saying that, oh, she had never known. Known means knowledge. Country, oh, that's like the world, right? The world around her. But this isn't really saying someone who's like comfortable in understanding the world. This is a kind of like more emotional. It's like saying like, oh, she felt as if her heart were hiding down there. She I don't know, felt the future stirring. This isn't really like knowing stuff. This is just like her being comfortable in nature or liking nature, which isn't really knowing the world around her. She doesn't say that she actually knows the world around her. So B, I'm gonna say B is probably not it. C, Alexandria drove off the rattler wagon, lost in the howling. Again, C is the same thing as A. It's not really saying anything about knowing stuff or taking comfort in understanding the world around her. And then D, Alexandria drew her shawl closer around her and stood leaning against the frame of the mill, looking at the stars which glittered so keenly through the frosty autumn air. She always loved to watch them, think of their vastness and distance, and of their ordered march. It fortified her to reflect upon the great operations of nature, and when she thought of the law that lay behind them, she felt a sense of personal security. Okay, so here it's literally saying that she is looking at the stars, so the world around her, right? And then by looking at these stars, she thinks of the law that lay behind them, which means she knows like the laws and like physics, right? So she understands like knowledge, and then she says when she like understands these laws, she feels a sense of personal security, which is exactly the same idea as having comfort and understanding the world around her. So therefore, the best answer is D, because again, while B sounds like the right answer, it's not right because it's not saying that she's comfortable by it, or it's not really saying that she knows stuff around the world. It just says that she like observes it. Well, D literally says that she understands like the laws and she feels comfort and personal security as a result. Okay, so those were two problems, and that was how you solve hard SAT command of evidence questions. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe for tomorrow's video. Thank you all, and goodbye. Now.